Hello, hello, everybody. Welcome to another week of the Queensland High School League of Legends series. I am Formal, and joining me again from across this great country is going to be Ewan Midnight Reed as we get ready to continue on some mid-season action, starting with Marsden taking on Forest Lake in a game that might determine one of these teams' playoff fates, and not necessarily for the better, as we do get to that stage of the tournament where every win matters and then some.
Yeah, we're reaching I'd say the meat and potatoes of the meal now, Formal. You've gotten through the peas that your parents make you eat at the start. Now you're getting through the good stuff of it, where everything is on the line for these teams. And I think this is going to show the nerves of a team, not just because how important this game is, but if you reach an important game and you start to crumble, if you just start to not think, not continue to strategize in and outside the game, it does start to fall apart. So hopefully they can keep their calm coming into the game today.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, to highlight one of the benefits that I suppose these type of scenarios might bring to students when it comes to, again, the usual team building communication, but it's also finding ways to handle adversity in a sense where you can perhaps overcome it, win or lose. That is what could be tested for these teams. I mean, the pressure of playoffs right around the corner. You want to qualify in order to make it towards that stage of the event. And these are the games which is going to test that mental, test that fortitude. These players are going to be put in stressful situations, perhaps. And how do you overcome it? Are you the type of person who can, find themselves relaxed, put things in perspective, and still find ways to enjoy yourself? Does the stress motivate you further, or do you crumble and are forced to learn a lesson, perhaps in the future? What did I do wrong in the mental side of things to sort of advance and grow? Rely on your teammates, communicate, work together. Those are the strengths that we want to see. And as per usual, with every event, yes, you can perhaps, pop off solo in lane, but I do believe that the teams that work together, strategize together, and play together are going to find more success, especially at the tail end of the season.
Exactly. I mean, we've got to remember, Formal, League of Legends is a 5 versus 5 game. Even if you do spectacularly in lane, if you're not able to coordinate with the rest of your team to advance your team strategy, it makes it quite a difficult game. And I always like to say, if you want to, show off, stand atop the podium on your own, there are 1v1 side-scroll fighting games to go and do that. With League of Legends, you kind of need to put a little bit of your pride aside and be willing, if you're doing well, to bring up the rest of your team. Even if you've got to drag them by the back of their hoodies and hold them over the finish line yourself. There are many ways you can approach that, as this game should be starting off very shortly. And very interesting, as it looks like we do have the teams up so everyone can see who is going to be playing in today's game. Of course, on the side of Forest Lake, we have Boshi, we have Captain Kasen, we have a VeryBadBunny, we have Minãri, and of course, down we have in Zemu. I'm going to assume is how you pronounce that.
It reminds me of the Rocket League pro player Zemue, but no, it's Zemu instead. Obviously, that is Forest Lake. They will be on the red side and taking them on. Marsden in blue with the Otaku Waffle, Kakashii in the jungle, LVyuki in mid, sontol in bot lane, and kkozume in support. I feel like Marsden likes their anime. I'm just going to go on a hunch right there. These players definitely seem to have other hobbies outside of League of Legends, which of course is always important, having multiple hobbies, multiple interests, even if it is anime. I ain't going to judge. People find joy in various things, and I've always been a fan of animation myself.
Yeah, I mean, I can't talk. I just started the 3rd season of something, so I'm really not in the position to judge there. And yeah, gotta have hobbies, right? As hopefully our game will start not too long now, Formal, but coming into this, and it's something that I'm going to talk about because I talk about it every time we cast a high school game together. It's what is going to be seen in today's game, because so many times you look at what is competitively viable right now, and one of the big things, at least for me, is the Jinx. Jinx is ridiculously strong in the bottom lane as AD carry. She can do pretty much anything she feels like, minus being good in the early game, and her late game potential is utterly ridiculous. But what are the chances, in your opinion, that we'll actually see her? Because let's be honest, Jinx isn't you kind of need to know what you're doing with the Jinx if you want to pull her out.
Yeah, Jinx is definitely a strange one. I do feel right now she is probably the most atypical bot lane carry at this stage. It's a range marksman, strong in team fights, has a little bit of self-peel as well as some engage potential if you're able to layer your abilities correctly. I feel Jinx, like a lot of marksmen, is one of those easy to learn, hard to master type champions. And if it does get through, it'll be very interesting to see not only the Jinx players' positioning, as well as how the team sort of picks and plays around the Jinx. Something we've noticed a bit in this league quite often is teams that do struggle don't necessarily pick synergistic team composition. And there's often one or two sort of champions left on their own stylistically who do struggle. And Jinx has been the victim of this on a couple occasions by this stage. So yeah, absolutely. I would love to see a team take Jinx, build a proper front line around this character, and sort of let the AD carry do their job and carry from the safety of a team fight. However, whether or not the teams are well versed in this style, that's going to be something to see, because realistically, we actually haven't seen these two schools yet on stream, and this is still kind of a learning experience for us as well in that regard.
Exactly, and that's kind of why normally here we would talk about, what picks do we kind of expect, what maybe other play styles coming from this team. There's going to be fast aggression coming out of the jungle who tries to spend his entire time invading the other side. Is it going to be bot side focus? But we're kind of still learning these team styles. And in a way, I think maybe these teams might also be still learning their own footing. But you'd hope coming into this point of the season formal that they at least have some groundwork to go off. They kind of know where they're strong and how they can actually use that to their advantage. So hopefully we'll get to see their strengths. And when it comes to pick ban, I'm expecting at least one ban that makes no sense, because there's always going to be something. It's going to be like a fizz ban or a singed ban. It's just like, and most times you look at that, you're like, why does this exist? And then you remember that people have some wild solo queue picks. So
yeah, I mean, I think a big example of this would be if you take a look at, what VeryBadBunny has been playing recently is not what you'd consider an atypical mid laner. I'm not going to drop it just in case, people might be listening in, but we can sort of discuss that more in the future for sure. I do feel as well coming into this matchup, as interesting as that bot lane matchup will be, all things considered, I'm also going to be keen on the jungle matchup, particularly for Marsden. I do feel on paper, if Marsden is going to have to success, I think Kakashii in that jungle is going to need a particular strong game over Captain Kasen, just because of the lane experience inequalities between these two sides. Forest Lakes is a lot more experienced in the laning phase, I feel, whereas Kakashii might be that more experienced jungler. And we're going to see in this game how much impact perhaps a stronger jungler could have on the early and mid game.
Yeah, well, we'll have to see what they do decide to lock in for. As we are finally into champion select here.
They banned the Yorick.
Yes, they did. They get rid of the Yorick. Yorick, last patch, was terrorizing top lane. I have a feeling, based on the way you've said that, though, that the Yorick mid lane was a real possibility as well. So I'm happy to see that gone.
I didn't think that was a thing. I was just like, looked at, the champion history. It's like, oh, VeryBadBunny's been playing a lot of Yorick. That's strange. You don't play that mid. But then you take into consideration a 6.2 KDA and you think, you know what? Let's play it safe, all right? Let's just not allow that to happen. I don't even know if that Yorick was being played mid, however. I just think rather not risk it, get Yorick off the map.
Yeah, better safe than sorry is a mentality I absolutely agree with, especially with Yorick. Even though he's not as strong as he was last patch for, I still think he's ridiculously strong. Especially because imagine that into a matchup where Yuki is playing something that is a squishy ranged mid laner. Oh my, okay. I was not ready to see a Gwen today, but I guess it's happening.
I'm not sure I think anyone's going to be ready to see this Gwen. This is such a risky pick coming from Marsden, actually, especially in priority as well. I believe that you are coming in with less than a week of experience on a champion, that you can take it in a competitive environment and find success. I mean, odds are, yeah, you probably don't know the champion yet, but you're banking on the fact your opponents won't know it as well. I'm going to be super fascinated to see how this Gwen plays out on the Rift.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I know she did receive a little bit of a buff mid-patch. She got 2 additional armor, and her Q does a little bit more damage. I believe it's like per snip, I think it was 5 damage per snip and 15 in total. So not a massive buff, but we'll see how that goes, because look on the other side for more Nunu locked in, which I love to see, and the Mordekaiser to hit anyone in the top lane with that good old bonk.
So the reason why I love the Nunu, and I think you probably are picking up on this as well, we did kind of identify that Forest Lake, particularly during that early mid phase, might get out-tempoed in the jungle. And I think Captain Kasen is kind of like recognizing already, you know what, if we're going in a straight sort of farming scaling battle, I could lose out. So I'm going to choose a jungler that doesn't necessarily need a lot of farm and can actually just provide a lot of lane pressure. pretty much from level 2 upwards. Those snowballs rolling into lane are definitely going to be enough to keep people from extending far in lane, and through that, it could be a way for Forest Lake to sort of mitigate some of that early pressure Kakashii could bring down and get themselves closer to that mid and late game where more likely we'll see Forest Lake succeed. So I absolutely do love this Nunu pick. It's now up for Captain Kasen in my eyes to play it correctly.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes, as there are a few other interesting lock-ins coming through here for them. It looks like everyone is locking in with themselves, so bot lanes are yet to show themselves. But Lux in the middle lane for Yuki doesn't surprise me too much. A very good mid laner if you can pilot her well. But the other side interests me greatly. Gangplank mid isn't something I've seen in a while. But against something as squishy as a Lux, it can actually be a potential kill lane for the Gangplank. So if Bunny is able to sort of survive the first couple levels, get the barrels online, and able to smack, all you need is one good barrel, smack it into Yuki, have Captain rock up in the mid lane on the Nunu, you've got easy dive potential coming through from the mid jungle duo of Forest Lake.
Yeah, it actually can be quite devastating as well. And I do find it interesting, VeryBadBunny opting for the Gangplank. This is a player that I'm pretty sure based on, eating Yorick bans, locking in Gangplank, I get the feeling this is a top laner actually who is playing mid just to sort of fill a role on a team, if you get my drift. And that's something that can happen in these tournaments. Obviously, when these schools try and form teams, it often you have to sort of learn how to be a bit of a role player in this sense. And while mid might not be the position that VeryBadBunny is most accustomed to, they're still going to step up and take what the team needs and hopefully find that success. Again, though, this could, in my eyes, still be an opening, perhaps for Marsden to really rely on Kakashii and perhaps even play through that mid lane. Lux is one of those weird mid lane champions where it's pretty easy to get lane priority, and then you don't even need to go all the way to a side lane to actually help out with a big final spark and to perhaps turn a fight in your favor. She can sort of control side lanes from the mid lane in and of itself, or at least nearby it. This early game has to go well for Marsden, although with the Caitlyn Thresh lock-in, perhaps they do have more scaling than we initially considered.
There is some scaling, but that scaling so far is very reliant on doing well in the early game. Caitlyn's specialty is bullying her opponents out of lane, which against a Kaiser is fantastic. Kaiser, struggles a little bit with the range side of things, so Caitlyn, assuming they deny Leona's ability to engage, should be able to bully the Kaiser out of lane, get some turret plate gold, and accelerate from what is a strong early game and try and skip the weak mid game that Caitlyn is arguably most famous for, because she struggles in the mid game. When you got 1.5 items, it just really isn't her specialty. So hopefully they do make that one work. But the scaling, I actually quite like Marsden's composition with one little hole formal, which is the Gwen. And that is purely because I have never casted Gwen before, and every single game I've seen Gwen played, she has had a negative scoreline. So I'm hoping that Otaku is able to pilot this champion well, but everyone's still in the learning phase of dealing with her, and up against a Mordekaiser who can just trap Gwen in the death realm. Gwen, I think, is best against range champions. Mordekaiser's not going to give you that range. Mordekaiser's going to walk up to you with a mace, pull you in, and smash you on top of the head.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting challenge for sure. I'm with you on this. I mean, you've at least seen Gwen play on the Rift. This is going to be my first time seeing this champion on the field of battle in and of itself. I'm super excited to see what Otaku Waffle can do with it. I do share your trepidation, though. If that top lane does start to go poorly, Mordekaiser has been a familiar raid boss throughout this league in recent years and seasons as well. Up there with the likes of what Darius used to be. I'm a little sad we didn't get to see much Darius throughout the 2021 season, but that's neither here nor there. It does feel like Mordekaiser in a lot of ways has stepped up and taken that place. And Boshi in the top lane, I feel has that potential to snowball this game very heavily in the favor of Forest Lakes. And it's interesting because I know in more traditional League of Legends, the top lane doesn't necessarily have that large impact, but it's something that I've noticed, strangely enough, and I don't mean to sound like bad manners when I say this whatsoever, but in lower levels, top lane often can have a larger impact because teams don't necessarily know how to handle a lane kingdom sort of dominant style play. And it's why top lane sometimes has become like the volatile aspect of a game that has determined a winner in a lot of these matches. And I feel Boshi is in position to have one of those games if Marsden isn't prepared to handle it. So many questions on Otaku Waffle coming into this. I'm going to be so curious if Marsden can handle that pressure.
Yeah, we'll have to see how that top lane goes. And of course, along with that, I'm super curious about this Thresh. I'm going to drag us to the bottom side for a little bit, Formal, because Thresh into Leona, if you play it right, Leona's never allowed to engage. And then if you do the cheeky rush Moby Boots on the Thresh, if you go up to visit Yuki in the middle lane and you catch VeryBadBunny, who's not ready, catch him with a hook, even a flash flay, that is an easy pickup on a Gangplank. And that kind of can throw the mid lane out of whack as well. So as you know, as interesting as you are in the top lane, I'm going to be keeping my eyes on the bottom lane here because it is so much up to kkozume to keep this Leona off of his Caitlyn to ensure that this bot lane actually works out in the favor of Marsden.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting to see how that bot lane will play out. Now, as you might be noticing, that spectator delay is tick-tocking away as we get ever closer to go on the Rift. Unfortunately, due to syncing issues, though, we are going to have to take one more quick break before we go on to Summoner's Rift itself. So please stay with us. In a minute or two, we will be back, well, as live as you can be with a spectator delay with the action. It is round 7 of this high school league. Or is it round 8? I've actually kind of lost track. Well, it's definitely... Well, it's technically week 6. I suppose you're not allowed to count the bye weeks, are you? Those don't count. Either way, yeah, we'll be going to a break, and when we come back, League of Legends. Welcome back, everybody. I told you it wouldn't be long. We are on Summoner's Rift. It is Marsden on the blue side taking on Forest Lakes in red in a game that could potentially knock one of these two teams out of the playoff stages. A chance to survive, a chance to win and thrive, or perhaps a chance to crumble under the pressure. It's really up to these teams and players and how they handle that stress. Already, we've seen Marsden take an angle that we didn't foresee, the locking in of Gwen, a new champion on Summoner's Rift. And how will these teams adapt to this spanner in the works? I'm excited to find out, you. And yet, as we did kind of both agree, perhaps that top lane might not be as determinant as either A, the jungle presence, or B, that bot lane in and of itself.
Yeah, it comes down to how aggressive the players are willing to play on that top half of the map. Because the jungle's attention in this game should be quite split. All three lanes or both junglers require some level of attention, whether that's a preemptive gank, such as something like in the middle lane, which would be quite effective, or a reactive gank, or a counter-engage gank, like, for example, if the Thresh or Leona pick a fight in the bottom lane, commit to the fight, then suddenly the jungler rocks up, you're outnumbered in a 2 versus 3, and it's very easy to lose fights like that. So keeping our eye on the junglers for me is going to be the first 10 minutes formal, and then, of course, I love me a good roaming Thresh, so I've kind of got a little bit of bias in hoping to see kkozume doing a little bit of roaming come the later stages of the game. But for now, the game should be calm. We've got both junglers starting on the same half of the map here, and Yuki trying to fight in the middle lane, but Bunny is not having it.
No, Bunny's going to be, I think, as aggressive as possible. But to go back to your idea with this, like, roaming kkozume on the Thresh, the one thing that has me worried about that, though, would be leaving a Caitlyn alone in a Leona Kaisen lane. Granted, the kill potential and that die potential at level 6 could be something very extreme, as the Otaku Waffle trying to actually go in with those scissors. I don't think that helmet's going to protect you from a tight cut right there. Decapitated as Boshi goes down.
Yeah, Boshi maybe not respecting the damage of the Gwen. Of course, again, you're not maybe too familiar with Gwen's damage output. The level 2 was also hit by Waffle first, so Boshi didn't have access to his shield, didn't really have much of anything to keep himself safe. So Waffle hit level 2, dived in, picks up the kill here, and the pressure that Otaku is now going to try and maintain on the top half of the map might result in a gank from the captain, because it's quite clear that Boshi is going to struggle to hold this lane on his own.
Yeah, it's interesting that both flashes are down, and I think Otaku Waffle, kind of aware of the potential threat of that early Captain Kasen return gank, is going to go ahead and reset, use that first blood gold of roughly, 1,300, and maybe get an early item. Also timed it decently all right to maybe clash with that next wave. I wouldn't have been averse to using teleport in this situation, just to sort of keep that pressure on, even in almost especially because Kakashi's on that top side as well. So even if there's that sort of immediate reaction from Captain Kasen, you would be prepared for the 2v2. Instead, opting that, save that teleport for later. And that tells me that either Marsden is thinking we'll just play things safe for now, or they might have an idea for a bot lane gank in the near future.
I'm actually a huge fan of saving that teleport, because yes, while Kakashii was on the top half of the map there, the Volibear really wasn't in much of a position to actually provide much of assistance. He was on about half health, he had very little mana because he was still farming the blue buff. As once again, topside, Waffle looking for a bit of a fight.
Yeah, I mean, we saw the damage the snipping did before. Boshi needs to be a little bit careful, even a level down. Meanwhile, this is the pressure that we wanted to see from the Nunu. Layer that CC all on kkozume, but then they switch their targets briefly to sontol. That gives kkozume that little bit of health to just survive. One fractional decisional error gives up a kill.
kkozume somehow getting out in one piece shouldn't happen, but Boshi might be trying to flash engage.
Flash Bear slap on a Volibear. Not your typical Flasher Bearer slapper, but definitely does the damage as snip, snip, no hit. Somehow Boshi survives in the top lane.
Yeah, Boshi, I think the reason he survived is because Kakashii went too early. He could have waited for Boshi to be a bit more aggressive, walk closer to him, because Waffle would be closer, and the flash was a bit aggressive in my opinion. Maybe he could have waited. But it does force Boshi back. He has been in a rough situation all game here. So the pressure topside is definitely in favor of Marsden, with the Gwen pick in, and it should continue for the next couple of minutes, because the goal difference between our two top laners is already 500, and Mordekaiser is meant to win lanes. He's meant to bully his opponents out. So to see a Mordekaiser losing a lane does hurt quite a bit, and it may force Forest Lake to look bottom side of the map to make, to get some pressure, maybe start stacking dragons nice and early.
I mean, we've already seen that bot side pressure actually in response by Forest Lake with that early gank from Captain Kasen down there. I believe they have done exactly what you said and sort of recognized that situation. And I do want to bring up, yes, Boshi has been, under a lot of pressure, but if you look at the straight CS versus CS scoreline, Boshi has been doing relatively decent. That major goal differential has come from the first blood that Otaku Waffle was able to secure for themselves. Either way, with an Ocean Drake now on the Rift and having been up there for about a minute, both teams are starting to look more towards that way. You can already see Marsden has been able to ward up that river, so any sort of roam coming from the Forest Lake lanes would be spotted. Forest Lake now responding with their own wards as, again, in the top lane, these two just going at it. Otaku Waffle doesn't want Boshi to get away with anything, yet it's Boshi who did hit level 6 first. Very interesting how this top lane is playing out.
Yeah, Waffle is continuing to try to keep the pressure on. He doesn't want to give Boshi the time to get, well, relevant. Mordekaiser is very strong, even when you get to the mid to late games, because, of course, against a Mordekaiser, you're kind of forced to pay for a QSS. No one in the game bought Cleanse to keep themselves safe. Hell, I don't actually think Cleanse saves you from the Death Realm in hindsight. So everyone's either going to have to build a QSS, or Otaku has to keep Boshi down to the point where when he does, Death Realm one of his teammates, they're not in threat of dying as getting called in for another fight.
Yeah, that was a good little tower shot right there, which gives Boshi the advantage in that trade. And Waffle needs to be careful because that's a lot of caster minions. Alka could be potentially wailing on him. That top lane, it feels volatile, but so too does this bot lane. Those are only level 3s, and that Yodel Trap is not well placed to catch anyone as Minãri does so much damage to kkozume. That's going to be a kill picked up by Forest Lake.
Yeah, finally making that gank work. Last time, the focus was a little bit off. This time, there was no hesitation. Hard target down the Thresh. Make sure he isn't able to get out in one piece. And that should, in theory, result in the first dragon given over to Forest Lake. If they want to pressure that, there is no support. And the chances of a contest, given the fact that their mid lane is being shoved in, they just lost their support, is low. But Forest Lake electing not to go try to start the early dragon stack, instead just sitting back saying, good, we got the successful gank, that's all we really want.
As the gameplay does continue, I think something that we've kind of not had a chance to talk much about yet, though, has been this mid lane. VeryBadBunny, already twice the CS of Yuki at this stage, as sontol needs to be a little careful clearing out this ward. Leona can jump on you at any given moment. Back to the mid lane, though, real quick. Like, if you want to know why, realistically, Forest Lake has this gold lane, it is coming from this mid lane.
Yeah, the Gangplank pressure coming out from Bunny is fantastic. Yuki has sort of been shoved under turret the whole game. Now, part of that is the way that BadBunny has been quite aggressive in their trading, as an attempt to steal. What? He stole it with the thunder, hit the E. He stole it with the cold thunder. Oh, the Sky Splitter, sorry. That was a phenomenal steal.
That shouldn't happen, Ewan. That shouldn't happen at all. Kakashii just got away with one right there. Oh, Smite was not available at the time for Captain Kasen. I'm not sure where the Smite got used previously, or perhaps it was a missed Smite. But how do you, with a Nunu jungle, unfortunately let that one slip? Kakashi's going to feel so proud of himself for that.
Yeah, a little bit of a mistake there. Realistically, stealing an objective from a Nunu is arguably one of the hardest things you can do. Consume Smite is a combo that does a ridiculous amount of damage, but the problem is, A, you kind of need both elements, the Consume and the Smite, and even so, it's not a perfect system. It's not like a Cho'Gath ultimate where, there's minimal chance. You still have to wait for the Q animation and you have to time it well. So, something like that is Kakashii.
Yeah, Kakashi's just not done as well. Otaku Waffle, dropping those needles, trying to get Boshi, who does take Otaku to the death realm where Otaku comes out on top. The 2v1 gank goes in favor of the Marsden side. And if Kakashii was feeling good before with that steal, it's definitely going to be feeling good now. I feel like we're about to see this Volibear got on a roll, especially considering he's still sitting on nearly 1,600 gold at this stage. We're waiting for that big Volibear power spike.
Yeah, and Kakashii should use the last couple of successes to accelerate the game state. And what I mean by that is he could look for a couple of these other lane ganks, and maybe even the bottom lane, when it's not so shoved out, for example, could be a potential gank. Because the worst thing I think you can do after securing the steal, after getting a successful gank and the immediate follow-up, is now sort of sit back and let the game play itself out. For example, your mid laner is struggling quite a bit. 40 CS down, has really been struggling to do much of anything in this middle lane here. To the point where it's 1,000 gold difference just from CS, but never mind bot lane.
Flash the Zenith Blade, the Cannon Barrage falling as well. This is a full commit as the Killer Instinct is used. Sontol will fall. The question is, do they get kkozume as well? Not this time. A good little block from that minion to stop the Void Seeker. Equalizing the kill count once again. Both these jugglers so hesitant to recall despite the amount of gold they are each sitting on. It's going to turn into an interesting game of, I think, whichever jungler tries to set that tempo first at this stage might give the team a huge advantage. Otaku Waffle going in on Boshi yet again. This looks like a very hard commit. In fact, we don't have an ultimate available for either of these top laners yet. They're still looking for kills. Eventually, Otaku Waffle does have to back away.
Yeah, Waffle, though, does have more, I suppose, right to be able to start the fight. Never mind bot lane.
Yeah. And this could be a case of Kakashii perhaps being too greedy with the gold before, looking to invade before resetting. Now has to burn ultimates defensively. The pistol shot from over the wall won't be enough to get a kill, but up top, the needle work just might be. Boshi will have to burn flash to get another tower, but the Waffle will follow him, and Boshi is taking enough to nearly stay alive to survive. Does stay around long enough to return the kill. It's a 1-for-1 in top.
Yeah, that top. So I'll quickly talk about the top side trade here. I think Yuki, being bullied out by Bunny again. So the topside trade, I like the idea of, but Otaku, I don't feel like needed to burn the flash to get the kill. Yes, it's great you get the kill, but and maybe it's just the way I like to look at League of Legends. I feel like force him out of lane, build your CS lead, recall, and then pick up your Riftmaker. You've already got Boshi on the back foot, but aggressive plays, and if you're trying to punish Boshi for even existing in your lane, it's a good approach to take. So aggressive styles, and with the first Mythic coming in for the side of Marsden in that top lane for Otaku, it's going to be a great position because now Boshi isn't allowed to even skirmish with the Gwen.
It's going to be a rough time for Mordekaiser, who we were, if you're on Forest Lake, you were definitely hoping that lane would be going that other way around. However, the good news for Forest Lake, their bot lane is still finding successes. And when you look at the difference in damage between these two bot laners right now, it's an 800 gold lead for Minãri over the likes of sontol. And that is seen in the itemization. A Kraken Slayer has been purchased from Minãri. And with this next Drake spawning in the next minute, you would have to feel like unless this gank by Marsden is successful down bot, it should be going Forest Lake's way. That is why we are seeing Marsden put the pressure down here right now. Expect Kakashii to keep cheeking up, moving up through those bushes. The return play, though, could be happening in mid, as that mid lane pressure still has not been handled yet.
Yeah, and the problem is, with the return being dropped here, it's not going to be handled. The problem of Bad Bunny is only going to escalate, because that is going to be 5 turret platings worth of gold being given over to the Gangplank. A TP coming through will be denied by Boshi, and now I feel like Boshi might get a little bit hurt.
Yeah, I'm not sure you want to deny that one necessarily, although with the Cannon Barrage, it's looking pretty good for Boshi. They do go into the Death Realm where the hammer will drop, and Boshi does get one back.
Bonk. Poor little Otaku there. I like the idea of what he was trying to do. He has the Riftmaker, which, in theory, should make him strong enough to take any fight. But look what Boshi's done with his own itemization here. It's actually really clever that he's abandoned the typical build path that you go Nash's Tooth as a first item, or any sort of real damage item. He's building defensively so that even in the sustained fights, when Otaku tries to nuke him down, he's like, all right, cool, you've done maybe a third of the damage you should have done, and my Q hits like a damn truck. Good luck. And is able to fight their way off. And because Boshi was actually able to win that fight, the bottom lane is now in trouble because no TP and a bit of a skirmish.
Yeah, but King Kasen doesn't connect with that snowball and now has to retreat. Kakashii, though, perhaps too eager to find the punish. Death Blade into the Solar Flare. Killer Instinct, but Minãri goes for the wrong target initially again. Sontol still will fall. Kakashii is able to slip away on a sliver of health. This should be an Infernal Drake considering the amount of pressure Forest Lake has around that objective. Yet Kakashi's going to walk in the Death Wish. There's a barrel there. Pop, pop. Kakashii falls down, and now the dragon is all but secured.
Yeah, there should be 3 for the side of Forest. Let's take a lot of fighting and skirmishing there. My heart, Formal. You're not allowed do that to me again.
You're not allowed to. You can get 1. You're not allowed to, okay? Or only 1 dragon steal from over a wall a game. I'm sorry, those are the rules.
Yeah, for now. Wait until, like, Otaku manages to steal it or something ridiculous like that is what's coming next. Talking of Otaku, he is mid lane.
Oh, VeryBadBunny in a 2v1 is going to have to sidestep that Luminous Binding. The captain arrives to the scene and will scare the Otaku away. Whoa! That was some needlework being thrown by Otaku Waffle right there. Ultimate now down for this Gwen. That could result in more mid lane priority. You can even see Zemnu sort of waiting in case a fight does break out.
Yeah, working around, but I don't expect Marsden to actually look for anything in this situation. They're just not that strong in comparison, because look at the itemization difference between those members. Formal, we've got 2 completed mythics to the side of Forest Lake. We've got a fully completed item for the Gangplank. Meanwhile, Marsden, they're still putting items together, so I love that they didn't actually look for the fight here. No.
It was, you saw it coming a mile away, and Kakashii, I think, got a little angry, stays around too long. Zenith Blade hits, the final spark does not do enough damage. The solar flare catches them both. The cannon barrage will fall, and now everyone's going down. This is the play that Forest Lake needed to make. They are being proactive, and they are taking this map over.
I just talked about how Marsden couldn't fight in those situations because they were down in terms of sheer itemization, in terms of raw stats. They aren't allowed to fight, and then Forest Lake immediately pick the fight, catch them in the jungle, steal away the blue buff, take away 2 kills, take away the top turret, and build the gold league to 7,000. And with a Rift Herald drop being topside now, this is going to be a difficult push to stop. And yeah, Sontol and kkozume have to get over here to help.
Oh, Otaku Waffle versus the world actually gets out alive, surprisingly, as it did look as if Forest Lake was trying to hold on to their abilities. Just let Shelly do the tower work right now. Waffle looking for that re-engage, goes snip, 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 except those scissors are running into that armor of a Mordekaiser, and I don't even know if there's hair underneath, so not much damage being done. They do push Forest Lake back away for now, yet this game is slowly spiraling out of control, nearly at a 10k difference as we approach the 18-minute mark.
Yeah, and part of the problem that Marsden are finding themselves in is they actually don't have the ability to fight their opponents. Because, I'm going to quickly come back to talking about stats and why they matter. 2 items completed now for the Gangplank on the side of Forest Lake. 1 item, which is the mythic for everyone bar Mordekaiser, completed, which gives them a ton of fighting and staying power. Because, of course, for example, the Gangplank hits like a damn truck. The Nunu is the truck that just doesn't move. It's like a freight train that it's not going to do a lot of damage, but it's so hard to get through. Compare that to what Marsden are actually able to bring in the fights. Well, in the fight on top half of the map there, Gwen with Otaku is the only person who does has an item to do damage, and even then, it's a Rift Maker, which isn't a damage item, it's a sustained team fight item. So, oh lord, bot side might be something fun.
Cannon barrage into the snowball. kkozume in that front line gets hit by the solar flare as Minãri is actually still throwing autos on Yuki. That said, though, when you drop that killer instinct, now is able to drop on kkozume. The lantern does get Yuki out of a dangerous spot into the safety of the tower, but it comes out their life. Final spark does return the favor as we look for that re-engage with the teleport coming in. It's a bit back, and Otaku Waffle still wants to fight. I'm not sure that's the right call, my friend. Zenith Blade shuts him down, and now being pulled back into the hammer. Yuki falls as well. Not sure about that re-engage from Marsden. That could have been a bit more costly. However, in the mid lane, you do have Kakashii pushing, but so too is the bot side pushing as Boshi drops that Death Realm. Sontol sort of stuck in a bad spot and goes down to this Mordekaiser, who is now turning into the raid boss we expected.
Yeah, and it's so heartbreaking for Marsden because the initial turnaround was good, but the problem is that they got too hungry. They saw an opening that didn't exist. I'm going to assume that they actually didn't see Boshi's teleport. I don't think he was in vision when he was teleporting topside. I don't think Marsden could have seen that far in the lane to see the teleport on the minion. So they didn't know that Boshi was coming in until, well, they re-engaged. And unfortunately, when you engage with their composition, especially with the likes of Gwen, getting out is a bit harder to do given you've just burned all of your mobility going in.
Yeah, it was, I dare I say it was sort of that desperation play. And while, yes, they didn't see the teleport, these are the things that you need to consider when in terms of, like, risk assessment before going into a play. Think of what can go right, think of what could go wrong, and take that risk. And when you're behind like this, you're more likely to take these sorts of plays. As Otaku Waffle again tries to engage a teleport in that back line as we see the absolute zero go in full charge. And with that, so too go the health bars of Marsden. Another desperation play in the chokehold explodes against them. Yuki will fall. It's a double kill for Minãri. It's a dragon for the captain. And this is Forest Lake extending their lead.
And what is most heartbreaking about that fight for the side of Marsden, because Forest Lake, it was a fantastic pickoff. Marsden, the last 2 critical fights, sontol hasn't been there. The topside fight that we saw, there was no Caitlyn involved because she was bottom lane. And this fight as well, sontol was not there for the team. To Caitlyn, who in my opinion is critical, not necessarily to kill Captain Kasen on the Nunu, but to put threat onto Minãri and to VeryBadBunny, because of course they have a lack of range. He's just never there for the fights. So what could be a threat to VeryBadBunny, a threat to Minãri, something else that Forest Lake have to juggle in these team fights, it just doesn't exist. So they're like, okay, cool, let's just run them down, problem solved.
And especially when you consider where a lot of these fights are taking place, which has been in the jungles and sort of like these chokeholds where Caitlyn's can excel with those yordle traps. Boshi, you might be the raid boss, and actually going to the Shadow Realm might give you 1 kill back. sontol doesn't have much to do there, but the second he returns, he should go down, give that shutdown gold over to the Otaku Waffle. If you're going to 1v1, might as well do it 1v5, right?
Well, I mean, it's a level of disrespect confidence that I haven't. Oh, yeah, confidence, disrespect, maybe the word I use there. He just really wanted that turret full. And to his credit, he did get it. The only, I think, really bad part of that is the fact that there was a shutdown gold sitting on Boshi when he made that play. So that's 500 gold given over to Otaku Waffle that didn't necessarily need to be given over. But I think, all things considering, it's not the end of the world, because Boshi has done a phenomenal job recovering from being being the victim in the top lane, being bullied out, to being, well, if you look at the gold difference between the two of them, ahead of Otaku Waffle in terms of gold.
Yeah, it's actually been a phenomenal comeback. And going back to some of, the key points this week that we referred to at the start was, how to handle stressful situations, how to handle difficulties. And Boshi kind of has exemplified that, sticking to that game plan, staying with it. Snowball, who almost hits Otaku Waffle, has to go ahead and drop that shield to become immune in order to not get knocked up. That follow-up damage was there waiting, but now on cooldown, you have to be careful. If Zemu decides to go in, that could be game. The base is being sieged upon. You do have those Baron-empowered cannon minions doing work on that back line. The inhibitor should be the next target unless Waffle falls here. Down goes the Solar Flare. It connects to the Absolute Zero. Doesn't do much damage, but it still allows Minãri to get that double kill as the final spark just tickles the front line of Forest Lake. The inhibitor will now fall, and the question is, do they end? Well, they were going to try at the very least.
Yeah, one final push is all it takes, and those barrels hit like a damn truck. And with the Mordekaiser ultimate, that should be enough to zone them away.
Yeah, kkozume now out of the fight. That's going to be another kill for Boshi, who does come back, but I'm not sure Yuki and sontol can really stop this Mordekaiser. They certainly can't save the base, as the Zenith Blade does find sontol. Yuki now versus the world does fall to that range damage of Minãri. There is the ace. That should be the game, as Forest Lakes look to keep their playoff hopes alive. They will advance with a win. For Marsden, it was a tough-fought battle, but unfortunately, that bot half of the map just did not go their way.
Yeah, and there were a couple macro calls that also just didn't really seem to favor Marsden. Marsden maybe not realizing... Oh, Boshi, come on. Goes down there. But the big thing for me for Marsden is that there were just too many fights where they didn't have everyone available for the fights. I talked earlier about the fights around the jungle bit and the top half of the map there, that just they weren't as a team. And even in those last couple of fights, Formal, the big thing that I noticed was that sontol, before that final push, sontol and kkozume were on the bottom half of the map pushing bot lane. I don't think that the Marsden lineup were really respecting or maybe realizing how bad the situation was. Because if they'd have known that, surely you could have rotated sontol and kkozume to the middle lane and be ready for the crash that came in only a minute later.
I feel at some stage, though, it's also a symptom of how that bot lane had been going in the past. Sometimes when you are playing and you find yourself behind, your mindset, your strategy is, I need to farm, I need to CS. Fighting is bad because most likely we will lose. And I feel as if sontol may have become a victim almost to that mindset and was starting to play maybe a little bit more of self-preservation than necessarily synergizing with the team. And an argument could be made that perhaps the entire team should have been focusing more on self-preservation. That's up to the team to decide what sort of mentality to approach in that place. However, what was apparent from a spectating view was the team did not seem to be in synergy with those decision-making moments. And as we are at sort of the late stages of the season, it's the team synergies, the team decisiveness that often will determine the winner and who will go to playoffs and who unfortunately might get knocked out. And Forest Lake, they felt like a team. When you saw those 5-man plays, those 5-man or 4-man dives on the bot side, they were for the most part in sync. Now, target selection got a little sketchy at times, but it wasn't as if they weren't going in, if that makes sense. So Forest Lake, I do feel had the advantage there, and it shows with their result.
Yeah, and the aggression that comes out of a team like this is fantastic. The one question I have for them, and it's obviously not a question that I could see answered today, is what happens to Forest Lake if maybe they don't get such a snowballed advantage, right? Because aggressive teams like we see here, when they've got the lead, it looks fantastic. And I really want to see Forest Lake again against a team that maybe doesn't goes toe for toe with them in lane. See how they're able to go when they aren't able to accelerate the game state as quickly as they did.
Well, if Boshi's play is anything to go by, I think they can handle that adversity pretty well, because Boshi did kind of struggle in early days, but was able to bounce back. That said, we're going to have to bounce back as well. We're going to be throwing it to a break, but when we return, our second game of the afternoon, so don't go too far. More Queensland High School League of Legends when we return.